Session is called to order. May we request MP Sahi Ujja to lead us in the invocation? And please remain standing for the singing of the national anthem and the Bangsamoro hymn.
وقال ربكم ادعوني استجب لكم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. اللهم بارك لنا في أمور الدنيا والآخرة وبارك لنا في حالنا هذا اليوم وبارك لنا في أمور الدنيا رحمن الرحيم. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار أدخلنا الجنة مع الأبرار يا عزيز يا غفار رب العالمين. سبحان ربنا رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Babayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Kayang magiliw, ewas ang sinakalan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, kuya ka ng magiting, sa manlulupin, di ka pasisingil, sa nagagang tutok sa simoy at sa langit ng pagaw, ay hinatang tulakan.
The Secretariat, please proceed with the roll call.
The members of the PTA Parliament, the Honorables Abbas Akbad, Abbas Haron, Abbas Zulkarnain, Abbas Basit Sarip, Abu Majid, Adyong Jaw Rahman Alonto, Ahang Abdullah, Alamia Laisa, Alauddin Faiz, Ali Ibrahim, Ali Lanang Jr., Ali Edi Mapa, Alil Cesar, Ambuluto Suarto, Ampatuan Baintan, Anayatin Susana, Asmawil Muslima, Balindong Pangalian, Bara Hamid Aminuddin,
Present.
Basman Anna Tarhata, Burahan Abraham,
Present.
Kandaw Bay Maleha,
Present po.
Dandamon Latif Maysara, Diamla Musa, Dipatuan Saprula, Ibrahim Ahod, Ismail Haji Abdulaziz, Gayak Abdullah,
Present.
Asim Abdullah,
Present.
Hasan Atimil, Iqbal Muager, Ismail Rasul, Jajuri Raisa, Jakilan Muslimin, Jikiri Al-Bakil, Karon Bainon, Lidasan Mussolini,
Present.
Loong Don Mustafa, Lorena Jose Rebani, Makako Abdurauf, Makapaar Abdullah,
Present.
Makaraya Jamel, Makasalong Marjani, Manguda Dato Kadafe,
Present.
Mantawel Malik, Mastura Dato Tokaw, Mastura Siti Shara, Mawali Lamil Bahar, Timbang Dato Mid Pantaw,
Present.
Mitmog Rasul Jr., Mujahid Abdul Muhammad, Munyos Hussein, Oranon Soid,
Present.
Pakasa Mobaida, Pak Abdul Wahab, Pangandaman Nabila Margarita, Ramos Amina, Rimbang Sultan Edrisa Nasser,
Sultan Rimbang present po. Thank you very much all.
Zakar Modayaw, Salena Al-Said, Sali Al-Said, Saliga Romeo, Salik Ali, Sanki Ali, Sani Punduma, Sadar Al-Zad,
Present po.
Sema Omar Reser, Sema Romeo, Sheikh Said,
Present.
Silongan Aida, Sulaiman Ali,
Present.
Tago Paisalin,
Present. Present.
Tan Nabil, Uja Sahi, Ulama Melanio, Usman Asfar, Jacob Muhammad, UAK Narciso.
Present. Assalamualaikum.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum. Mr. Speaker, on the basis of the roll call, with 25 members of the parliament responded physically and 28 members of the parliament responded via Zoom. We have a total of 53 members of the parliament. Mr. Speaker, we therefore certify that there is the presence of quorum.
With 53 present and with the certification of the Secretary General for existence of a quorum, we are now proceeding with today's order of business. Majority Floor Leader.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Mr. Speaker, President Nabil Tan.
Secretariat, please take note.
Assalamualaikum.
MP Nabil Tan is present.
Yes. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Mr. Speaker, before we proceed, may we offer a minute of silence on the untimely death of former mayor of Lamitan City, Basilan, Mayor Rose Oregay, Mr. Speaker. Yes, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker of the Bangsamoro Transition Authority Parliament, Attorney Ali Pangalian Balindong, Honorable Deputy Speaker and Presiding Officer, Attorney Omar Sema, Honorable members of the Bangsamoro Transition Authority Parliament, Secretariat, guests, visitors, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Mr. Speaker, we are now on item number 6. Reading and approval of journal of the previous session. Journal number 65 of July 15, 2021 session. Mr. Speaker, I move to dispense with the reading of the journal of the previous session, and I further move for the approval of this, Mr. Speaker.
Any second to the motions of the Majority Floor Leader?
Second, the motion. Second.
The reading and the reading of the previous journal is dispensed with, and the same time they are already approved.
Mr. Speaker, we are now on item number 7, resolutions. May we request the Secretary General to read the first proposed resolution for today's session, including the title, the number, and the authors.
The Secretariat is directed to read the title of the first proposed resolution, including the name of the authors and co-authors.
Proposed resolution number 782. Resolution urging the MBHTE to fast-track the appointment of qualified teachers within the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. The principal author is MP Don Mustafa A. Loong, and the co-authors are MPs Baintan A. Patuan, Amil Bahar S. Mawalil, Laisa M. Alamia, Suharto M. Ambuludto, Rasul Y. Mitmug Jr., Rasul E. Ismail, Musa K. S. Jamla, Faiz S. Alauddin, Maysara D. Latif, Bay Maleha B. Kandaw, Abdullah E. Gayab, Eddie M. Ali, Cesar H. Alil, Romeo C. Saliga, Punduma B. Sani, Melanio U. Ulama, Susana S. Anayatin, Omar Yasser C. Sema, Modayaw M. Sakar, Muslima A. Asmawil, and Nabila Margarita P. Pangandaman.
Mr. Speaker, I move to refer this to the Committee on Basic, Higher, and Technical Education.
There's a motion to refer proposed resolution number 7682 to the Committee on Basic, Higher, and Technical Education. Is there any second? There being no objection,
Sure, Mr. Speaker, second motion.
is referred to the said committee.
Mr. Speaker, before we proceed, Mr. Speaker, there is a newly filed resolution to be hopefully to be included in the order of business. Just I move, Mr. Speaker, to amend the order of business to include proposed resolution number 804, because there is a similar resolution which is already form part of this OB. Paraisahan na lang, Mr. Speaker. I move to amend the order of business to include proposed resolution number 804 as flashed in the screen. Mr.
There's a motion to amend the order of business to include proposed resolution number 804. Is there any second? There being no objection, the motion is approved.
Second the motion.
Proceed now to second proposed resolution for today's session. May we request again the Secretariat to read the second proposed resolution for today's session.
The Secretariat is so requested.
Proposed resolution number 784. Resolution calling on the Ministry of Basic, Higher and Technical Education in partnership and coordination with the Ministry of Social Services and Development and Ministry of Public Works to conduct an annual safety and sanitary inspection and evaluation and regular monitoring of educational facilities of madrasa and tahfiz al-Quran schools within the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. The principal author is MP Don Mustafa A. Loong, and the co-authors are MPs Baintan A. Ampatuan, Amil Bahares Mawalil, Laisa M. Alamia, Suharto M. Ambuludto, Rasul Y. Mitmug Jr., Rasul Ismail, Musa K.S. Jamla, Faiz S. Alauddin, Maysara D. Latif, Baymaleha B. Kandao, Abdullah E. Gayak, Eddie M. Ali, Cesar H. Alil, Romeo C. Saliga, Punduma B. Sani, Melanio U. Ulama, Susana S. Anayatin, Omar Yasser C. Sema, Mudayo M. Sakar, Muslima A. Asmawil, and Nabila Margarita P. Pangandaman.
Mr. Speaker, I move to refer to the Committee on Education, Committee on Social Services and Development, and the Committee on Public Works.
There's a motion to refer proposed resolution number 784 to the Committee on Education, Basic, Higher and Technical Education, to the Committee on Social Services, and to the Committee on Public Works. The second, there being no objection, the motion is approved.
Mr. Speaker, again, we request the Secretariat to read the next proposed resolution.
The Secretariat is so requested.
Proposed resolution number 785. Resolution urging the Ministry of Environment, Natural Resources and Energy to establish a treatment, storage, and disposal facility for waste, electrical, and electronic equipment or electronic waste in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. The principal author is MP Don Mustafa A. Loong. The co-authors are MP Baintan A. Ampatuan, Amil Bahares Mawalin, Laisa M. Alamia, Suharto M. Ambuludto, Rasul Y. Mitmug Jr., Rasul Ismail, Musa K.S. Jamla, Faiz S. Alauddin, Maysara D. Latif, Baymaleha B. Kandao, Abdullah E. Gayak, Eddie M. Ali, Cesar H. Alil, Romeo C. Saliga, Punduma B. Sani, Melanio U. Ulama, Susana S. Anayatin, Omar Yasser C. Sema, Mudayo M. Sakar, Muslima A. Asmawil, and Nabila Margarita P. Pangandaman.
Mr. Speaker, I move to refer this to the Committee on Environment, Natural Resources and Energy.
There is a motion to refer proposed resolution number 785 to the Committee on Environment, Natural Resources and Energy. During the second, there being no objection, the motion is approved.
Second the motion, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Secretary, to read the next proposed resolution.
The Secretariat is so requested.
Proposed resolution number 791. Resolution directing the Bangsamoro Women Commission in coordination with the Ministry of Social Services and Development and Ministry of Interior and Local Government to conduct a comprehensive census and assessment report on the situation of the widows or wives of returnees, specifically in Butiglano del Sur, with the end in view of crafting a sustainable program for them. The principal author is MP Maysara D. Latif, and the co-authors are MPs Suharto M. Ambuludto, Susana S. Anayatin, Eddie M. Ali, Baymaleha B. Kandao, Don Mustafa A. Loong, Safrula M. D. Patuan, Modayaw M. Sakar, Abdul Wahab M. Pak, Punduma B. Sani, Abdullah A. Ahang, Cesar H. Alil, Rasol Y. Mitmug Jr., Basit S. Abbas, and Muslima A. Asmawil.
Mr. Speaker, I move to refer to the Committee on Social Services and Development and the Committee on Interior and Local Government.
There's a motion to refer proposed resolution number 791 to the Committee on Social Services and Development and to the Committee on Local Government. Is there any second? There being no objection, the motion is
Again, Mr. Speaker, may we request the Secretariat to read the next proposed resolution.
the Secretariat is directed to read the title of the next proposed resolution, including the name of the authors and co-authors.
Proposed resolution number 792. Resolution directing the proper ministries, including the Ministry of Basic, Higher and Technical Education and Ministry of Social Services and Development, to look into the status of Torils or indigenous boarding school in the BARM with the end in view of crafting measures to strengthen or create appropriate programs and providing funds therefore. The principal author is MP Maysara D. Latif, and the co-authors are MPs Suharto M. Ambuludto, Susana S. Anayatin, Eddie M. Ali, Bay Maleha B. Candao, Don Mustafa A. Loong, Safrula M. Dipatuan, Modayaw M. Sakar, Abdul Wahab M. Pak, Punduma B. Sani, Abdullah A. Ahang, SRH Alil, Rasol Y. Mitmug Jr., Basit S. Abbas, and Muslima S. A. Asmawil.
Mr. Speaker, I move to refer to the Committee on Basic, Higher and Technical Education and the Committee on Social Services and Development.
There's a motion to refer proposed resolution number 792 to the Committee on Basic, Higher and Technical Education and to the Committee on Social Services and Development. Is there any second? There being no objection, the motion is approved.
Mr. Speaker, again, may we request the Secretariat to read the next proposed resolution.
The Secretariat is directed to read the title of the next proposed resolution, including the name of the authors and co-authors.
Proposed resolution number 795. Resolution requesting the BARM government agencies to observe a respect for hijab policy in the conduct of government business, and requesting the Bangsamoro Human Rights Commission and Bangsamoro Women Commission to conduct advocacy building on the implementation of the hijab policy. The authors of this proposed resolution are MPs Aida M. Silongan, Ana Tarhata S. Basman, Ubaida C. Pakasem, Raisa H. Jajuri, Marjani S. Makasalong, and Bainon G. Caron.
Mr. Speaker, I move to treat this as simple resolution and be transferred for the business of the day.
Second motion.
There's a motion to treat proposed resolution number 795 as simple resolution be transferred to the business for the day. Is there any second? There being no objection, the motion is approved. Proposed resolution number 795 is transferred to the business for the day.
Again, Mr. Speaker, may we request the Secretariat to read the next proposed resolution.
The Secretariat is directed to read the title of the next proposed resolution, including the name of the authors and co-authors.
Proposed resolution number 796. Resolution requesting the Ministry of Health and local government units and hospitals to provide private spaces for Muslim women at public vaccination sites for their safety and protection, and deployment of women health service providers to attend to Muslim women during their vaccination. The authors of this proposed resolution are MPs Aida M. Silongan, Ana Tarhata S. Basman, Baida C. Pakasem, Raisa H. Jajuri, Marjani S. Makasalong, and Bainon G. Caron.
Mr. Speaker, I move to refer this to the Committee on Health.
Second motion.
There's a motion to refer proposed resolution number 796 to the Committee on Health. Is there any second? There being no objection, the motion is approved. Proposed resolution number 796 is referred to the Committee on Health.
Again, Mr. Speaker, may we request the Secretariat to read the next proposed resolution.
The Secretariat is directed to read the title of the next proposed resolution, including the name of the authors and co-authors.
Proposed Resolution Number 797, Resolution expressing commendation to the 12 young Bangsamoro athletes who brought prestige and recognition to the Bangsamoro by exhibiting their skills and talent and bagging 25 medals with 11 golds, 6 silvers, and 8 bronzes, an overall champion during the Pan-Asian International Jiu-Jitsu competition held at Ayala Circuit Mall, Manila last June 26, 2022. The principal author is MP Lanang T. Ali Jr. and the co-authors are MPs Abdulaziz M. Ismail, Bainon G. Caron, Narciso C. Uike, Abdullah B. Hashim, Mujib C. Abu, Ubaida C. Pakasen, Hussein P. Munoz, Abdullah E. Gayak, Aida M. Silongan, Faiz S. Alauddin, and Haron M. Abbas.
Mr. Speaker, I move to treat this as simple resolution and be transferred for the business of the day.
There's a motion to treat proposed resolution number 797 as a simple resolution. So in the second, there being no objection, proposed resolution 797 should be transferred to the business for the day.
Again, Mr. Speaker, may we request the Secretariat to read the next proposed resolution.
The Secretariat is directed to read the title of the next proposed resolution, including the name of the authors and co-authors.
Proposed Resolution Number 798, Resolution extending sincerest condolence to the family of Miss Rowaina Sayadi, election officer of Haji Muhammad Ajul Basilan, who was shot dead by still unidentified motorcycle riding gunmen on July 19, 2022, just in front of her office and near police checkpoint at Isabela Central Elementary Pilot School in Isabela City, Basilan Province. The sole author of this proposed resolution is MP Abdul Mumin A. Mujahid.
Mr. Speaker, I move to treat this as simple resolution and be transferred for the business of the day.
There's a motion to treat proposed resolution number 798 as simple resolution. Is there any second? There being no objection, the motion is approved.
Again, Mr. Speaker, may we request the Secretariat to read the next proposed resolution.
The Secretariat is directed to read the title of the next proposed resolution, including the name of the authors and co-authors.
Proposed Resolution Number 799, Resolution expressing deepest condolences and calling on the proper authorities to serve justice to the tragic murder of election officer Attorney Rowaina Sayadi. The sole author is MP Romeo C. Saliga.
Mr. Speaker, I move to treat this as simple resolution and be transferred for the business of the day.
There is a motion to treat proposed resolution number 799 as a simple resolution. So in the second, there being no objection, the motion is approved. Proposed resolution number 799 is transferred to the business for the day.
Again, Mr. Speaker, may we request the Secretariat to read the next proposed resolution.
The Secretariat is directed to read the title of the next proposed resolution, including the name of the authors and co-authors.
Proposed Resolution Number 804, Resolution congratulating the Bangsamoro martial arts athletes for their exceptional performance in the recent Pan-Asian International Jiu-Jitsu competition in Ayala Mall Circuit Makati, Metro Manila. The sole author is MP Abdullah B. Hashim.
Mr. Speaker, I move to treat this as simple resolution and be transferred for the business of the day.
There's a motion to treat proposed resolution number 804 as simple resolution. Is there any second?
Second.
There being no objection, proposed resolution number 804 is transferred to the business for the day.
Mr. Speaker, we are now on item number 8. First stage of bills. May we request again the Secretariat to read the first Parliament bill for on first stage of bills for this session, Mr. Speaker, including the title, the number, and the authors.
The Secretariat is so ordered.
PTA Parliament Bill Number 94, an act providing for socio-economic assistance to the surviving spouse and children of the dead Mujahideen members of the Moro Islamic Liberation Front and the members of the Moro National Liberation Front, and providing funds therefore. The author is MP Sultan Idrisa N. Rimbang.
Mr. Speaker, this is a private member bill. Any members of the parliament to signify their interest as co-authors, they may do so by filling up the authorship form that was distributed before this session started. May we again request the Secretary to read the next Parliament Bill number 4 today's session, Mr. Speaker.
The Secretary is so ordered to read the title of the next proposed BTA Parliament Bill.
BTA Parliament Bill number 195, an act requiring all hospitals in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region to establish a dialysis unit and provide free dialysis services to indigent patients. The principal author is MP Amil Bahar S. Mawalil, and the co-authors are MPs Jr., Liza M. Alamia, Suharto M. Ambuludto, Don Mustafa A. Loong, Rasul E. Ismail, and Abraham T. Burahan.
Mr. Speaker, again, this is a private member bill. Any members of the parliament who would like to be co-authors, they may do so by filling up the authorship form that was distributed before this session started. Again, Mr. Speaker, may we request the Secretary to read the next proposed parliament bill for today's session.
The Secretary is so ordered.
BTA Parliament Bill number 208, an act establishing indigenous peoples community centers in appropriate barangays and appropriating funds therefore. The principal author is MP Don Mustafa A. Loong, and the co-authors are MPs Bayintan A. Ampatuan, Amil Bahar S. Mawalil, Liza M. Alamia, Suharto M. Ambuludto, Rasul Y. Mitmug Jr., Rasul E. Ismail, Musa K. S. Jamla, Faiz S. Alauddin, Maysara D. Latif, by Maleha B. Kandao, Abdullah E. Gayak, Eddie M. Ali, Cesar H. Alil, Punduma B. Sani, Melanio U. Ulama, Susana S. Anayatin, Omar Yasser C. Sema, Modayaw M. Sakar, Muslima A. Asmawil, and Nabila Margarita P. Pangandaman.
Mr. Speaker, this is a private member bill. Any members of the parliament who signify their interest as co-authors, they may do so by filling up the co-authorship form that was distributed before this session started. Mr. Speaker, we are now on item number 11, unfinished business, on committee report number 119, submitted by the Committee on Labor and Employment in relation to BTA Parliament Bill number 201. This is the Bangsamoro Labor and Employment Code. The principal author of MP Romeo Sema. The parliamentary status of this bill, Mr. Speaker, we are in the period of interpellation and debate, Mr. Speaker. I move to open the period of interpellation and debate, Mr. Speaker.
There is a motion to open the period of interpellation debate. There is a second. The motion is approved. The period of interpellations debate is now open.
Mr. Speaker,
Majority Floor Leader, may I put on record that the minority are not around,
Yes,
so
Mr.
we will
Speaker.
not be able to complete the
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
period of interpellation debate today unless some of them or all of them will be arriving today.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. We now first respectfully recognize the interpellator, Mr. Speaker, MP Attorney Raisa Jajuri.
Yes, thank you.
The lady from Sulu
Thank you,
is
Speaker,
recognized.
and thank you, Majority Floor Leader. Mr. Speaker, before I accept the interpellator, may I read the resolutions of the Bangsamoro Summit participated by the Bangsamoro labor workers in the BARM and their allies, Mr. Speaker.
You may now proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. A resolutions of the Bangsamoro Labor Summit for the urgent passage of the proposed legislative bill, the Bangsamoro Labor and Employment Code of 2022, and other legislative bills on labor. Whereas the representative of the Bangsamoro workers, their allies, other Bangsamoro labor organizations, and the participants during the Bangsamoro Labor Summit, promotions of social justice through proposed legislation conducted on July 6-7, 2022, signified the urgent need of the passage of the legislative bills, the Bangsamoro Labor and Employment Code of 2022, the Bangsamoro Magna Carta for Workers in the Informal Economy, the Bangsamoro Tripartitions and Social Dialogue, the Bangsamoro Public Service Eligibility Equivalency Act, and the Bangsamoro Labor Justice Administration Act. Whereas to truly uplift the lives of the Bangsamoro workers is to continue the promotions of decent work and equal opportunities for all. Now, therefore, that the Chief Minister is hereby respectfully requested for the issuance of the certification granting this measure as urgent for the presentations of the same to the Parliament. Resolve further that let this resolution be copy furnished to the Chief Minister and the Speaker of the Parliament for their favorable considerations and approval. Done this 7 July 2022 at Ibrahim Hall, Emanor, Cotabato City. Signed, Union Workers Organization, Attorney Sani Matola, President, Federations of Free Workers, Mr. Sofreno M. Mataro, Regional Vice President, Associated Labor Unions, TUCP, or Trade Union Congress of the Philippines, Mr. Felix V. Cabongas, Jr., National Public Workers Congress, Public, Mr. Johnny G. Balawag, Public Service Labor, Independent Corporation, a Confederation, Ms. Jillian Rocky, Chief of Staff, PS Link, and Mr. Joshua Mata, Secretary General Centro, Colonel Ibnu Hasim Undog, President PCCI Sulu Chapter, Abdullah N. Benito, President Associations Bangsamoro Agri-Based Labor Management, Ibama Ahmad, Vice President Labor Representative of the Bangsamoro Tripartite Industrial Peace Council. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The interpellator, you may now proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. If the good gentleman, the principal author of Bill number 201 would allow me, I'd like to propound some questions, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, most welcome po.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At the outset, I'd just like to make it clear that the questions that will be asked are intended to improve, if there's still room for improvement, the bill, before we pass it into law. And I'd like to start with the more general questions, Mr. Speaker. The first of which is regarding the way that the bill refers to national laws. Specifically, Mr. Speaker, regarding penalties that are provided in these national laws. My question, Mr. Speaker, is whether the proponent is of the opinion that the Parliament cannot enact laws that have penal provisions. Because my observation, Mr. Speaker, is that this bill does not directly impose penalties, while there may be acts that are considered criminal in nature, meaning the commission of these acts will result to the filing or possible filing of criminal cases, or the violation of certain provisions will require the filing of cases that can result in the imposition of penalties, whether it's fine or imprisonment, but the provisions do not directly impose the penalties. Maybe know, Mr. Speaker, why that is the design in which the penalty provisions are worded or are included in the bill.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, substantially followed by the national law, Mr. Speaker.
My question, Mr. Speaker, is whether the proponent is of the opinion that the Parliament cannot directly enact laws that contain penal provisions. Because my concern is that when we make references to national laws, first, the message is that the authority that is already granted to us under the BOL, particularly in this case on the matter of labor, is not absolute or is not strong enough that we can actually state acts that will have penal consequences, penalties, criminal penalties. But we just make references to national laws. Is that because I think that's the consequence. We're sending the message that the power that's granted to us under the BOL on the matter of labor is not as strong as we thought it is, because there is no qualification under the BOL regarding imposition of penalties.
Mr. Speaker, but in the Labor Code of the Philippines, Mr. Speaker, specifically in the section 246, the penalty should unestablished violate any provisions of this code and implementing rules and regulation. The sanction provided under Presidential Decree number 442, otherwise known as Labor Code of the Philippines, or other related laws shall apply as the case may be. This is the from the Labor Code of the Philippines.
Precisely my point, Mr. Speaker. Why can we not put in the bill the penalties, and we can even pattern that to the ones that are provided under PD 442. But if we just say that the penalty shall be as provided in PD 442, then it's not us that, it's not the Parliament, it's not the Bangsamoro government that's imposing the penalty. We're throwing back the power to the national government. When you look at the BOL, and when it says that certain powers are already given to the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region, it did not make any qualification. It may cover all these matters, and we may put penal provisions on laws that we pass in relation to these matters. So that's my observation, Mr. Speaker, because I think we are diminishing the powers that are already granted to us under the BOL when we make references to national laws and not directly imposing the penalties through the laws that we pass.
I am in aboard, Mr. Speaker. During the period of amendments, I hope the good MP, Attorney Raisa, can propose for the amendment, Mr. Speaker.
May I cut in? On that point, if we specifically put the penalty there as an act of the Parliament, then there will be a need to consult with the Department of Justice on that matter, because they are the ones that are prosecuting these kinds of cases.
Well, Mr. Speaker, may I give my opinion on that? I think the BOL already said that we can enact laws. And many of these, the matters that are provided in the BOL, the enumeration of the powers of the autonomous region, there is no qualification on the issue of imposition of penalties. Maybe we can dialogue with prosecutors particularly those who are stationed in the BARM, because then they would have to be familiar with the laws that we pass. But I don't think we have to get their consent or their approval, since the BOL has already been, it's clear that these are our powers. But we can dialogue with them so that when they prosecute cases that involve the the violation of laws passed by the parliament, they are familiar with these laws.
Yeah, that's precisely the point. We need to consult with them. However, there is also a need to consult with the courts, because are we not expanding the jurisdiction of the courts on this matter?
I think especially if it's specific acts pertaining to matters that are already provided in the BOL as powers of the parliament, and we exercise that power through laws, through legislation passed by the parliament. I do not think we are expanding the jurisdiction of courts, Mr. Speaker. Anyway, my point is, and maybe this is not just for the labor code. This is for all other pieces of legislation that the parliament may want to enact in the exercise of powers granted to it by the Bangsamoro Organic Law. In under the local government code, LGUs also have the power to enact laws that have penal provisions, but there is a limit provided based on the level of the local government. In our case, there is no limit. There is none that's provided in the BOL. So and I would not interpret it to say that, and therefore you cannot pass laws that have penal provisions, because how do we ensure protection, for example, of women, for example, which is one of the powers provided under the BOL, if we are not able to put some teeth in the laws that we pass to protect women, for example.
You may continue with your interpellation.
Okay, Mr. Speaker. So I think that's something that we can still discuss, but that's one matter that is raised in relation to BTA Bill number 201. May I now go, Mr. Speaker, to the title, which makes specific mention of sections 11, 18, and 19 of Bangsamoro Autonomy Act number 13, which is the administrative code of the Bangsamoro. Maybe know, Mr. Speaker, from the proponent, which parts of or what specific portions of section 11, 18, and 19 are amended by virtue of BTA Bill 201, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Yes, Mr. Speaker, the proposed amendment on the proposed amendment, the specific provisions or sections of the Bangsamoro Autonomy Act number 13, the section 11, 18, and 19. Section 11, Mr. Speaker, provides the functions of Bureau of Labor Relations and Standard. The section 241 of the BLIC amended this because the functions of the BRS or the Bangsamoro Bureau of Labor Relations and Standard was given to the Conciliations and Mediation Board, specifically for conciliations and mediation, Mr. Speaker, the section 11. And section 18, Mr. Speaker, provides for the functions of the Bangsamoro Tripartite Wages and Productivity Board. And section 19 is the compositions of the Bangsamoro Tripartite Wage Productivity Board, which is amended by the BLIC or the Bangsamoro Labor and Employment Code by creating the Bangsamoro Tripartite Wages and Productivity Commission. and its sub-regional board, Mr. Speaker. So that is the proposed amendment of the Bangsamoro Bangsamoro Autonomy Act number 13.
So, Mr. Speaker, just to be clarified, so Section 11 is amended because under the proposed bill, all the powers that are enumerated under that provision of BAA 13 are now with the Bangsamoro Conciliation and Mediation Board. So all of the powers.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Will there be powers left to the BLRS?
Not, there's, Mr. Speaker, only the powers regarding on the conciliations and mediations of the Bureau of Labor Relations and Standard, Mr. Speaker. Because the structure, Mr. Speaker, the Bureau of Labor and Reconciliations, so meron tayong division. One divisions of that bureau is the conciliations and mediation. So those powers of the labor conciliations and mediations is now napunta po dito sa included in the powers and functions of the conciliations and mediation board.
So it's not all of the enumerated functions.
Yes po.
Only
Yes po.
those related to conciliation and mediation.
Yes po. Check.
And the rest will stay
Yes,
with the
only the functions on the conciliations and mediation.
Okay. With respect to the Bangsamoro Tripartite Wages and Productivity Board, I did not get what the amendments are.
The amendment, Mr. Speaker, we changed the board to commission because in the current structure, Mr. Speaker, the national tripartite wage productivity board in national is the commission. Then the regional is the board. So we in the Bangsamoro autonomous government, we are not administrative autonomous government. We are political autonomous government. So we liberated the counterpart of the national commission is the Bangsamoro Tripartite Wage and Productivity Commission. Is exactly the counterpart. Now we have three sub regional board: the Southwestern Mindanao region and North Central Mindanao region and Central Mindanao region. We have three board to equivalent as regional tripartite wage, Mr. Speaker.
Anyway, we can go through these specific powers of the commission in the succeeding provisions.
Yes, po.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, can I proceed now to Section 5? If I compare Section 5, Mr. Speaker, with the counterpart provision of PD 442, which is the National Labor Code, there is a difference in language. While we say that any doubt in the implementation and interpretation of the provisions of this code shall be liberally construed in favor of labor in the proposed bill. In the National Labor Code, it says that any doubt shall be resolved in favor of labor. Is there any significance in the change of language, Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Speaker, actually this is a substantially the same provision. Just paraphrase, the words liberal construed. The words liberal construed is usually the term used by the jurisprudence in interpreting these provisions of law, Mr. Speaker.
So there is no diminution or
Yes, po.
lessening of the...
Yes, only paraphrasing.
Okay, because if you say it's resolved in favor of labor, I think it's clearer that there is a resolution in favor of labor, while the other one is just a construction.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll just leave that as is. Can I proceed now, Mr. Speaker, to Section 7, which is the Statement of Objectives under Book 1, Pre-Employment. I I'd just like to ask about paragraph C, because it talks about the free choice of employment that should be enjoyed by every Bangsamoro. Now, my question, Mr. Speaker, is we might be asked whether this right or this free choice is only reserved for those who ascribe to the Bangsamoro identity, or are we saying that those who are residents of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region will have the same enjoyment of this right?
So there too, Mr. Speaker, from and within the Bangsamoro, Mr. Speaker.
But does that include those who may be in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region, but who may not ascribe to the Bangsamoro identity?
That's part, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, just so that it's clear, Mr. Speaker, that we are not.
So he means that every constituent in the
Yes.
Bangsamoro.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to go to section 13 in the definition of terms, and then it also goes to other provisions after this specific section. And I'm referring to the paragraph E, dual training system, which is again a national law. And it's a national law that was passed in 1994. Is this the latest law on training systems for students or trainees? Because I feel that it's a very old law, and I'm not exactly sure if we want to use that, or if there are more updated or a later law, then can we use that?
Yes, I'm welcome for being in the period. Mr. Speaker, actually, this door training system is taken directly to the door training system Act of 1994, Mr. Speaker. There's no, hindi po siya updated, Mr. Speaker.
Are those who will undergo the program, are they apprentices? I mean,
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Because there are also learners and apprentices. So under the DTS, they are considered apprentice.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, I will maybe review if this law has, if there's an updated version of on matters regarding trainees.
This is actually an amendment to the labor code PD 442, right?
Okay. So in section 15, Mr. Speaker, the proposal is that apprentices shall be provided with compensation amounting to 75% of the minimum wage. Because I recall that the Parliament passed a resolution regarding the government internship program of MOLE, where we were asked as ministries and other agencies of the Bangsamoro government that received these interns coming from MOLE to pay for the remaining 25%. I guess the idea is to help interns receive the full amount, considering that many of them may not have enough resources for transportation, for food during the internship program. But in the apprenticeship agreement, it's still 75%.
Yes, 75%.
And the host,
Twe-
well,
25%. Uh,
the 25% will remain unpaid.
Yeah.
No?
from the host office po.
But it's just the employer, we only have to pay 75%.
75%.
We are not writing in stone that the ministries will shoulder 25%.
It was a request.
No.
It will be made as a request because we cannot constrict the power of the ministries to handle their in handling their funds.
Finance. Yes, Mr. Speaker, the resolution was an appeal to the ministries or the host agencies to pay for the 25. So it's an appeal, it's a request.
May I intervene, Mr. Speaker? May I move to have a 15-minute ASA prayer break, Mr. Speaker?
Session is suspended for 15 minutes. We will continue the interpellation conducted by the lady from Sulu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Moving on to section 16, Mr. Speaker, regarding apprenticeship agreements. Mr. Speaker, the section talks about apprenticeship committees, tripartite apprenticeship committees, which I do not find in other sections, meaning there is not much that is said about these apprenticeship committees. May I just be enlightened? First, who will constitute the apprenticeship committees? At what level will these committees be constituted? Is it for each enterprise or every entity constituting with the employer and then the apprentice and then mole? So in any case, Mr. Speaker, I want to be enlightened as to these apprenticeship committees and the functions and mandates of the committees.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Actually, the apprenticeships committee, the tripartite apprenticeships committee, is to be constituted by the Ministry of Labor and Employment, of course, with the presentations by the industry organizations or civic group.
So it's to be constituted at the level of the industry?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
So it's not for each employer? Because here the task of the apprenticeship committee is to ratify the apprenticeship agreement. Which apprenticeship agreement shall be at the level of the apprentice and the employer? I think.
Yes, including the employers, Mr. Speaker.
So the apprenticeship agreement will be signed by the apprentice and his or her employer, and this apprenticeship agreement will be elevated to an tripartite apprenticeship committees at the level of the industry, not at the level of each employer.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. May we know the purpose, Mr. Speaker? Why these apprenticeship agreements have to be ratified by the committees, and what are the other functions of the tripartite apprenticeship committees?
Yes, the function, Mr. Speaker, of the apprenticeship committee, of course, to decide on the training and trade, Mr. Speaker, or the training institution, Mr. Speaker.
So it's about the standards, to check whether the apprenticeship agreements are in accordance with the labor code. I understand, Mr. Speaker, that in the National Labor Code, there's also there are tripartite apprenticeship committees, but I'm not exactly sure whether what this is about and whether we want to replicate that in the Bangsamoro.
Mr. Speaker, hello, I'm my partner authors, MP Latif, to answer that question.
Yeah, the lady from Tugayalan of the is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. In section 21, Mr. Speaker, the apprenticeship program, Mr. Speaker, is a voluntary program that will be undertaken by the employer or accredited entity. So there is a so-called apprenticeship schemes or programs that will be organized or sponsored by every employer or firm or any association or even a civic organization that will conduct training of apprentices, Mr. Speaker. So the apprentice is entirely within the Ministry of Labor and Employment MOLE Training Center. That is stated in section 17, Mr. Speaker, that it is really the MOLE who shall provide the institutional framework for that.
Under section 20, under section 21.
17, paragraph B, Mr. Speaker. Section 17.
But I think that's not responsive to the question of the interpellator on the composition and the purpose of the ratification of the apprenticeship agreement.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. In the scope of the apprenticeship, section 11, wherein that provision is found, Mr. Speaker, apprenticeship, section 14, the scope is under the Ministry of Labor Employment. It reads as follows. The chapter that includes the apprenticeship covers persons or workers engaged in apprenticeship, learnership, or dual training system and other enterprise-based training as may be determined by the MOLE, Mr. Chair. So it's really under the MOLE, under the Bangsamoro Techbook Education Entrepreneurship Training Program that will supervise this program, Mr. Chair. So that is a program under the functions and powers of MOLE, Mr. Chair. Their objective are as follows. So it is a program of the Bangsamoro Ministry of Labor Employment that will help meet the demand of the economy for trained human resources. The number 2, establish a regional enterprise-based training program with participation of employers, workers, government agencies, non-government organizations, and even lastly, set standards, Mr. Chair. Those are the program objective under section 12 of this enterprise-based training program.
And the apprenticeship committees, which are supposed to be tripartite. What is the role of the tripartite committees aside from ratifying the apprenticeship agreements? If the MOLE is the one that's going to be...
Mr. Chair, may we ask the interpellator what section?
It's in section 15, the last paragraph. Section 16, last paragraph.
Yes, Mr. Chair, it's the tripartite apprenticeship committees to be constituted by the MOLE. Meaning, Mr. Chair, it's the MOLE who will constitute the tripartite apprenticeship committee.
To be, why is it called tripartite?
Tripartite in the International Labor Organization standards, Mr. Chair, is the number 1, labor, management or the owners, and the worker. So in the International Labor Convention, Mr. Chair, we call it tripartite. It's no longer feasible to just have dual, like employer and employee. It has to involve the government.
And when we say labor, is it the apprentice?
Yes, Mr. Chair, the tripartite organization, the tripartite
Nature.
committee,
Mhm.
apprenticeship committee involves the following, Mr. Chair. So it can be the learner, the apprentice, the government, in this respect, the MOLE, and then the firm or the establishment or the sponsoring firm or the employer. Not really employer, Mr. Chair, but the sponsoring entity, because he's not yet an employee technically. He's just a learner or apprentice. There's no contract of service yet. There's no contractual obligation yet.
There's no labor.
Employer-employee relation yet.
Yeah, employer-employee
It's just an
relation.
apprentice.
My question here is, I did not find in the enumeration what is the constitution of the committees.
Mr. Chair, the committee can be
What section?
in the section 6, the interpolator in the period of amendment, they can actually introduce amendment for this so that it will be more defined.
But we would like to ask the proponents what is the wisdom in including that in section 16. What is the concept of the tripartite apprenticeship committees? While there is no employer-employee relationship, well, first it is defined, it is characterized as being tripartite. So there should be three parties. And if it's not labor, is it the individual apprentice?
Mr. Chair, in the apprenticeship agreement, it's the employer or her agent. And
Yes,
then,
we are okay with the employer. We are
Yes.
okay with MOLE.
yes,
What
and
is
then,
the third
and then
party?
the third one would be the apprentice, Mr. Chair.
So each apprentice will be a member of this committee.
The apprentice, Mr. Chair, according to the definition, is a person or worker who is covered by a written apprenticeship agreement with an individual employer or recognized entities. So meaning the apprentice can be one, just an apprentice, one, Mr. Chair, that is signatory to the agreement.
So
there would be an apprenticeship committee.
So first, Mr. Speaker, there's going to be an agreement, an apprenticeship agreement between a specific employer and an individual apprentice.
Yes, Mr.
Now,
Chair.
this section says that when the agreement is signed, it should be submitted to the tripartite apprenticeship committees. And that committee will now be the same employer, the same apprentice, and then MOLE. Why not just submit it to MOLE?
Mr. Chair, I believe that you are correct. The interpolator is correct that maybe the third in the tripartite would be an organization.
And that would be a labor organization?
Apprentice organization, probably.
I think that's in regular cases, in labor cases, the apprenticeship, the tripartite committee involves the labor organization, as far as I remember.
Yes, Mr. Chair, maybe
So
that.
is
that
it
could be an
constituted,
amendment.
Mr. Speaker, at the level of the employer,
section?
meaning that
I think
entity?
it's at the level of the employer.
If there is no labor organization in
Then-
that, but in that specific establishment, because some areas do not have organized
Yes.
labor. But if we raise it to a level of the industry, then I think there will be more chances of having labor organizations.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we submit.
So it could be.
Can you forego first that interpellation on that matter, because that's quite cloudy in that area. Maybe the proponents will have to review that first.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Speaker. We go now to section 19, and this is the aptitude test.
Kunin ko lang yung
So there will be, I guess it will be a competitive process so that applicants will have to be subjected to an aptitude test. Will it be a uniform test for all establishments intending to have apprenticeship programs?
Yes, Mr. Chair, consonant with the minimum qualification of our apprenticeship applicants under the chapter, the employer or entity within the apprenticeship program shall provide for aptitude test in the selection of apprentice. So, meaning, Mr. Chair, it may not be a
Uniform.
standard aptitude test, but it is in accordance with the employer or entities. But these employer or entities must be accredited, Mr. Chair, by the MOLE. So meaning if they undergo accreditation, that also involves the testing. So
Yeah, may I butt in? Because the issue of apprenticeship is somehow being used to circumvent labor laws on minimum wage, especially in employers which have no labor organization, because you would see that an apprentice would be paid 75% of the minimum wage, and that's one way they can circumvent. So I think the issue of apprenticeship should be strictly construed in favor of labor. No, you look at the angle on that.
And I guess under Section 15, there would be rules issued by the Ministry of Labor. Not only, I guess it says here about the wage rates, but maybe apprenticeships as a whole, so that it cannot be used to circumvent the rights of workers. But there is no process, and this is a question, Mr. Speaker, as to whether a position is apprenticeable or is there.
meaning, Mr. Chair, this is under the Title 1 under Techbook and Entrepreneurship Training, meaning these are the what we call on-the-job training, OJTs. So
Is
the
it
position
the same as OJT?
because if you read Chapter 1 under Title 1, Human Resource Development, it is under that general mother thematic where there's Techbook entrepreneurship training program. So the next one would be enterprise-based training. So meaning, Mr. Chair, the question as to is it based on position? Is that it? Is it based on a certain position? Because this is just a training. Training, Mr. Chair. It's not even a position, it's a trainee. We're training him to become skilled in a particular matter.
Anyway, Mr. Speaker, I think as provided in Section 14, the apprenticeable positions will be for highly technical industries only, and only when approved by the Minister of Labor. So we hope that will suffice in protecting the rights of workers. Anyway, can I move on, Mr. Speaker, to Section 20? And maybe other sections are also relevant because it talks of these sections talk about Ministry of Labor and Employment training centers or accredited training institution. May we know if there are already training centers, MOLE training centers, or even training institutions that are accredited by MOLE?
Currently, Mr. Speaker, is wala pa tayo kung accredited training center of the Ministry of Labor and Employment.
But that is within the powers of
Yes.
MOLE, not only to accredit, but also to establish training centers.
Yes, but to properly coordinated with the MBHT test po.
Because that is my question, how different will it be from TVIs, technical vocational institutions that are accredited also by MBHTE
Yes,
under its technical education.
yes po.
So I think we should be ready with, how different it will be from MBHTE training centers or accredited training centers by MBHTE. If Mole has an answer now, that would help us in refining the bill, because we do not want to create overlapping of functions.
Yes.
Do you have any concept on how different it is right now, or how do you intend to have a different set of training institutions that is different from those under MBHTE?
But in the section, yeah. Okay.
Mr. Chair, may I answer, because I'm also a principal co-author. So the question is whether or not we will have a different training center for apprentice. Under section 10 of the same bill.
Just to be clear, Mr. Speaker, it's not just for the apprentice. I think the reference to MOLE training centers is found in several provisions of the law. So not just for apprenticeship. And my question is how different will it be from MBHTE training centers?
Anong difference nila?
So you are referring to training centers established by MOLE
By MOLE.
and those accredited.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Bang MBHT training center?
I think the question can be answered by yes or no if there is already a labor training center from MOLE or any accredited labor training centers. Yes or no lang yung answers diyan.
I think the proponent answered that there is none at the moment. But if the intention is to establish them, I think we need to justify and find the difference, if there is, between those that will be established under MOLE and those that are either established or will be established by MBHTE.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Labor and Employment, we can formulate or establish on at Mr. Speaker in the future, near future.
Well, I did not really get the answer, but that is just my concern. So that when we finalize the bill, we have to be sure that we do not, create overlapping functions and create confusion.
Yeah, may I suggest to the Secretariat to properly record the interpellation, because there are still matters that need to be clarified.
Mr. Chair, for the purpose of clarity, we would just like to make it clear that the TechVoc entrepreneurship training under the Section 10 is MOLE and MBHTE and NTIT and other relevant agencies. So meaning, Mr. Chair, hindi lang po isang organization, kundi multiple ministries po ang involved dito sa training na ito. So kung it's regarding TESDA, magkaiba po yung kanilang purpose. Kasi ito po, Mr. Chair, very clear, these are OJTs, trainees. Yung TESDA naman po, Mr. Chair, are not OJTs, trainees. They are being trained for a particular set of skill, and sometimes they're being paid pa nga for attending the school. TESDA is a training institution. It's a school. But this one is not a training center. It's merely an apprenticeship program where there's an employer hiring the apprentice. So,
I
hindi
think,
po siya yung
yeah.
TESDA na training center na mag-aaral ka ng carpentry, bread making, pastry. Ito po, kunwari, for example, for draftsmanship, yung nagda-draft ng mga drawing, mag-apprentice ka doon, meron kang kontrata. At least, protected po yung mga bata. Magkaiba po yung TESDA at saka ito.
Yeah, I think clear yung answer niyo dito. However, the question was ano yung context o ano yung itsura ng training center ninyo?
So yung, Mr. Chair, yung Mole Center ba yun? Are you putting up a Mole Center?
Like under section 17, I think. There's under paragraph B, for example, but there are other provisions also, similar provisions. It talks about apprenticeship entirely within a mole training center. So this is specifically mole.
So Mr. Chair, yung training center na established ng mole for this purpose is purely for this program of apprenticeship. Hindi po siya yung, I don't think it would be under the TESDA or MBHT na similar kasi magkaiba po yung mandate nila eh. So medyo klaro naman tayo doon na they are not going to overlap. Because this one,
but if you look at your chapter 1 kasi nakalagay dito technical and vocational and entrepreneurial
but the mole,
entrepreneurship,
Mr. Chair, is
training.
after. It's not after they are more of for hiring. Yun namang TESDA, it's more for training, skills-based. Ito naman, Mr. Chair, if anybody has undergone TESDA, alam nila na they go there, there's a particular number of hours, they learn skills of carpentry. But this one, Mr. Chair, is different. It's like an on-the-job training. In fact, under Section 27, nandito po yun, no, on-the-job training. On-the-job training, if required,
I think
for
that's
graduation.
different, Mr. Chair.
So parang yung dito, Mr. Chair, ang sinasabi natin, it's an apprenticeship. Hindi siya yung TESDA. Malayo po yung difference ng dalawa.
I think we will have to Majority Floor Leader, 1 minute suspension.
Majority. not providing for the power of the Minister of Labor, if I am correct, okay, from that power to inspect the learnership agreement.
What section?
23, Mr. Speaker.
Twenty-three, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. As I pointed out, Mr. Speaker, in the counterpart National Labor Code, there's a provision saying that the Secretary of Labor has the power to inspect learnership agreements. But here, unless I have missed it in other provisions, that power is not given to the minister. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr.
Okay.
Speaker.
So why are we withholding that power to the minister to inspect learnership agreements? Because, Mr. Speaker, just like the apprentice, the learner also will have less less than the minimum wage coming from the employer.
Yes, and you can also look at that
Yes, but
provision that
for-
we are giving 40%
Yes.
also.
But still, the employer saves on salaries, and the cost is transferred to the Bangsamoro government. Now I'm asking, why are we not giving the Minister of Labor the power to inspect learnership agreements, which is a power granted to the Secretary of Labor under the National Labor Code? Or do we want to put that in? If
I think in the period of amendment, Mr. Speaker, can yes, you can propose in the period of amendment, Mr. Speaker, to include the.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, we will raise that matter during the period of amendments. I will now move, Mr. Speaker, to section 27, and this is the one mentioned by MP Latif. This is on the job training. And it says that the minister may authorize on the job training if required by school or training program or as a requisite for graduation. How different is this from the DTS that is mentioned in the other provisions? Because I'm not very familiar with the dual training system. What I understand is that it's dual because the school is involved and also the establishment is involved. Is it the same? Section 27 is the same as DTS?
Mr. Chair, the DTS as defined in this bill is as follows. It refers to instructional delivery system of technical and vocational education training that combines in-plant training, in-school training based on a training plan designed collaboratively and implemented by an accredited dual system educational institution training center. So I believe, Mr. Chair, it is not the same as the DTS, the on-the-job training, because if you read section 27, practically almost all schools have on-the-job training, but that may not necessarily be a DTS school. dual training systems ko.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Speaker. I will now move to another matter. And this is on section 32, and this is the Government Internship and Development Program, which I think at present is called the GIP. Now it's being proposed here as GIDP. Maybe now, Mr. Speaker, whether there's an age bracket for those who are qualified under the program. Here we are talking about graduates already. So high school grad or technical vocational school graduate or college graduates. And in our experience in the ministry, there's that question on whether we can take on interns who have graduated for several years already. No? But Section 32 does not give us more specific guidance on this matter.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Actually, the Section 32 currently implemented by the Ministry of Labor and Employment. So the Ministry of Labor and Employment provided that the guidelines on the GIDP, GIDP. 65% for the 75 and 25% for the host institution.
Yes. Maybe we can, in the period of amendment, we can be more descriptive of the program so that it will not again be used against receiving less than 100%, because this is
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
because as mentioned, they are already graduates, no? They could actually apply for regular positions if they are qualified.
Yes, I am about Mr. Speaker.
Okay. May I now go, Mr. Speaker, to Section 34, and this is on the matter of Public Employment Service Office, or the pesos. So the pesos are under Section 34, will be under the office of the governor, city, or municipal mayor. But the same provision says that they are linked to MOLE. How are they linked to MOLE, Mr. Speaker, if they are under the governor, city, or municipal mayor?
Actually, the role of the Ministry of Labor and Employment is only technical supervision, Mr. Speaker.
So these pesos are offices under the LGU.
Yes, po.
And they are run and funded by the LGU.
Yes, po.
The ministry provides technical support to the staff
Yes, po.
for the implementation of the programs.
Yes, po.
And maybe we should make sure that this provision is included in the local governance code and not just in the labor code, since pesos are units, structures within the local governments. Okay, now I will go to public sector workers under Title 14. Section 48, Mr. Speaker. And this is on the matter of contract of service and job orders. Section 48 provides that the right of consultants or those hired under contract of service or job order arrangements engaged by government agencies, offices or agencies within the BARM to self-organization, to collectively negotiate, and so forth. My question, Mr. Speaker, is on the matter of the right to collectively negotiate and to self-organization. Because at present, there is no employer-employee relationship in contract of service arrangements. Is this provision espousing the same arrangement, or is it introducing a new set of rights?
Introducing a new vision, Mr. Speaker.
This is already a matter decided by the Supreme Court that there's no employer. If there is no employer-employee relationship, you cannot organize.
Maybe the proponents can give light on this new innovation, this innovative provision, granting job orders and contract of service workers the right to self-organization and to collectively negotiate. Maybe they can explain, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, on this provision, Mr. Speaker, currently, nakita po natin na our employers, no employers relationship, our contract of service, the job orders, and memorandum of agreement. So, kung titignan natin, Mr. Speaker, itong mga personal nito, itong mga employees natin, ito is sila yung sometimes mas heavy pa yung kanilang works sa services sa ating for example in the our departments. So social breaking, so can organize, can organize and serve, then at least meron para magkaroon ng collective negotiation doon sa kanilang resolution. But on the matter of the status, Mr. Speaker.
So by this provision, are we saying that there will now be an employer-employee relationship between the worker and the agency?
No employee-employees relationship, Mr. Speaker.
But they will
I
have,
think that's a matter that has been answered. You can proceed with other question. We will just have to clarify this.
one other matter, Mr. Speaker, on this provision provided in this section is the right to collectively negotiate. Is it the same as collective bargaining? Will there be if the negotiation is successful, will there be a collective bargaining agreement between the workers and the agency?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
What about other rights here, like concerted activities? Will that include the right to strike?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
On the flip side of the rights of workers to strike, there's the right of the employer to lock down. Will that also be available to the employer in relation to when there's that relationship now with the employees?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
With the workers? Okay. Well, Mr. Speaker, that will be, I have several other questions for under this provision. Maybe we should thresh it out because as pointed out by the speaker, there's jurisprudence on this and we have to be clear on what we are changing by virtue of this section. So that if there is a controversy in the implementation of this provision, we can explain it. I mean, the labor arbiter or the, I don't know, whoever is going to have that case resolved, it has to be clear, no? What we are introducing by virtue of Section 48, considering that there is jurisprudence on the matter.
Sir, you're foregoing in the meantime your interpellation. You will continue.
I will continue, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, considering that's already 5 o'clock, 5:08 in the afternoon, Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the session until tomorrow at 1:30 in the afternoon.
We
Just
proceed with the Ranao Development Authority
Yes,
tomorrow.
so just suspend this session, Mr. Speaker.
Session is suspended until 1:30, 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon.